We'll be looking at the business transaction tracker, which I have loaded onto my Google Drive. You can see here that I have created a subfolder, and inside that subfolder is my Google document business transaction tracker. Now, this document is an Excel document which Google has converted into the Google version of Excel, which is Google Sheets. So by virtue of software that I downloaded on my computer, I can now synchronize my computer with the Google Drive. So the document on my computer is an Excel document, and I will open that now, right? As I do, this is the document in Excel. If I go to my browser and I open the Google Drive document, which is in Sheets, is exactly the same document, but it presents slightly differently, and there are slightly different commands at the top there. For instance, I used this particular setting to change the size of the screen, whereas if I had gone to my Microsoft version of the document, it is bottom right, and I can change the size of the screen as it is there. Right. So it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to use this kind of system. You may just use the Google Drive version and update it accordingly, or you may use the Excel version. We'll be using the Excel version today, knowing that as soon as I close this document and save it and close it, it will automatically synchronize with my Google Drive document, this one here. So I can close this one now, and vice versa. If I were to have done the document, the processing or the transactions in this particular document, then it will update automatically to the Excel document every time I do it. So to start with this document, we start on the summary on input page. Basically, there are two sections. So we want to set ourselves up for success. So there are two areas, the green area and the red area there. The green area speaks to a drop-down list, which we will find in the income tab, right? And we will find it here. And if I use this drop-down list, I can see that I've already populated what that drop-down list should say. If I were to change anything in this drop-down list, let's say, for instance, I take away plates, small, and milk jars, and instead of milk jars, I put in trays, right? And I hit enter. If I now go to my input page, income tab, sorry, and I click the list drop-down list, I will see that there is nothing to be found in the area that used to say plates small, but I do have trays now. So whatever I put in, going back to summary page, whatever I put in here will feature in my input tab. Similarly, whatever I put in here in this section here will feature in my expenses tab. Same deal here. So whatever I had in the summary page, the summary tab will feature here. So the reason why this is so that I could design the expenses or the expense categories according to my business, and every person can do that. What I've done on the side here is to give you some examples of expense categories. You'll know the income categories because you know your business, right? And those will be products or services, or products and or services. But line entry examples for expenses generally depends on the type of the business. So I have inputted a number of expense categories here. One of those is personal drawings, because it sometimes happens that we pull out our business credit card or debit card and use that for personal transactions, and we do want to keep track of that. Now, once we have used these cells for any one thing and we have commenced inputting expenses in our expenses tab, then we should not be changing these any longer. Rather, add a new category. Do not delete any of these once you have started tracking your expenses or inputting the information in your expenses. You'll find this very easy to work with. One last thing I will show you is that it automatically calculates income and expenses per quarter depending on your annotation of an expense or a category. So for instance, if I were to mark this as first quarter, then that amount should feature as first quarter income. If I were to do another amount as first quarter, that will be added to it, right? Now I have a new amount there for quarter, right? And this should be helpful in terms of calculating how much you have generated per quarter. The same applies to expenses. If you were to do first quarter expenses, that should feature in the expense category over there. Right. So all I now have to do is I have to look at my bank accounts and my receipts, and I have to simply record how much, at what point, and concerning what did I spend or did I generate income. For instance, on the 12th of January, I generated income from Rhino, and that was in relation to, all I need to do is use the drop down list. Let's say plates medium, and that was 250. Did you see that the 250 automatically went to plates medium? Right. If we were to say 17 January for Celeste, she purchased, let's say, cups of 175. Now that 175, I need to input in there. Let's say it was 185 and hit enter, and that will change the amount that sits under the cups category. And you will see the total for cups up there, right? I will show you also that at the bottom here we have an income pie chart, right? And so what that means is it gives us a distribution of income from the various products or services that we have. It will do the same for expenses, for instance. We don't have any expenses noted as yet, but that will populate as soon as we do that. So all we need to do is basically type the date, the name of the customer, or details about the customer, or some details, and the type of product that I had sold to them. Let's say teaspoons has gone to Priscilla at 205, and that is 205. Kirsten also purchased medium plates, and you can see that there are now 2 sales in terms of medium plates, and the total is at the top there, shows at the top. Michelle purchased trays, and so Roger purchased cups. And so we can see that there are 2 there for 350 and 185, and that totals 535. We can see that we have a distribution. No plates large were sold, so that's 0. And when we go to the income pie chart, it gives us a distribution as to what we have sold over that period. Now again, if we do not allocate a quarter to it, it won't show up in this particular tab. But if we do allocate a quarter to it, so let's say quarter 1 ends at the end of January, right? And quarter 2 starts at the start of February, we can now allocate a quarter to each particular transaction. And if we do that, then we will see that this will be populated accordingly, right? So quarter 1 generated income of that 640 and expenses of 150 so far, right? And then the balance of that would be 490. Debtors, simply those people that owe money to you. You have made the sale, but they haven't given you the cash. And so there may be an amount of, let's say, 350 concerning that. Right? Creditors are people to whom you owe money. You have purchased something, but you haven't paid them yet. And let's say there is an amount of 205 concerning that. The net effect, basically, if this is a positive amount, is that you have made a net profit, let's say, in very simple terms. For that particular quarter. Right. Now let's have a look at the expenses tab. Again, as before, we have the dates of various transactions. You'll typically use your bank account for this. And can you see we have not allocated any of the expenses to a category? And for that reason, it is shown in yellow here. The moment, and it's the unallocated column. So we can see that there is unallocated funds of or monies of 1,111 in there, right? The moment I allocate a category to Shell payment, which will be fuel, that goes away, right? That leaves that area and now sits in fuel, right? If I were to say Bunnings, I purchase, let's say, paint, and I allocate these expenses to each. Banjo's Casino is a good example of something that is not a business expense, or likely not. So I will allocate that to personal drawings, because at the end of the day, I want to know how much money did I take out of the business. My bookkeeper or accountant will want to know that, so that they may work out the tax I need to pay to the tax office, right? So Google Ads will be advertising and marketing, which is a good example to show that we don't have to have a category for each particular item. We could group them. So marketing and advertising can go together, right? Crazy Domains may go under the category, if I so wanted to do it, IT and internet. All right. UE might go as insurance, right? So insurances. So as soon as I do that, it gets allocated here automatically, and the total for each column shows up at the top there. And so telephone, and then let's say XYZ cleaning services would be the cleaning services there, right? And again, because I have given them a date, the vendor's name, the expense line or expense category, and the amount. It all sits very nicely in each of these categories. And now the pie chart will be populated to tell me where my money has gone. And this is a worthy exercise to have a look at. However, if we look at the expenses line, we can see that we have not allocated the expenses according to quarter. And so now if we do so, we might find, so January is quarter one and February is quarter two. And so if we allocate quarter one and quarter two, we'll find that our summary sheet or our summary tab are populated with the correct numbers. This is an easy way to see how you've done for that particular quarter. And there it is. So once again, 1,050 in income, 580 in expenses. I may have 200 in debtors and 150 in creditors, and my net effect is $512. $520. And that essentially is how we track our income and expenses. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have all our income and expenses tracked according to our bank account, right? We want to have a dedicated bank account for business transactions. And we want to tick each of those items on the bank statement as we input that in our income and expense tracker.